My husband Derek laughed when I lit candles for our 7th anniversary dinner. Not a chuckle or a polite smile, but a genuine, derisive laugh that echoed through our Portland dining room, while I stood there in the dress I'd bought specifically for tonight, holding a serving dish of his favorite coq au vin that had taken me 4 hours to prepare. "Jesus Christ, Melissa," he said, reaching for his phone instead of the wine I'd selected. "What is this? Some Hallmark movie? We're not 20 anymore." The other 3 couples at our dinner party, his colleagues from the telecommunications firm where he worked as a sales manager, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. His boss, Gerald, cleared his throat. Gerald's wife, Marianne, studied her empty plate with sudden fascination, but Derek's work friend, Todd, smirked into his whiskey glass, and I watched Todd's girlfriend, Ashley, a 26-year-old marketing assistant, hide a smile behind her hand. I'd spent the entire day preparing. The dining room looked exactly like the photo I'd saved from a design blog 6 months ago. Cream-colored linens, fresh eucalyptus arranged in low brass bowls, those specific beeswax candles that smelled like honey and bergamot. The menu had been planned for weeks. Everything was supposed to be perfect. "It's our anniversary," I said quietly, still holding the heavy dish. My arms were beginning to shake. "And I'm grateful, babe. I really am." Derek didn't look up from his phone. "But maybe save the romance novel aesthetic for when it's just us? This is a little much." Todd laughed outright then. "Dude, you're being roasted by candles." I set the dish down carefully in the center of the table, my hand steady despite the heat flooding my face. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of romantic gestures met with increasing mockery. 7 years of watching the man I'd loved transform into someone who seemed to actively enjoy humiliating me in front of others. "You're right," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "This is much too much effort." Something in my tone made Derek finally look up. Our eyes met across the candlelight, and for just a second, I saw confusion flicker across his face. He'd been expecting hurt, maybe tears, certainly an apology. What he saw instead made him frown. I pulled out my chair and sat down. "Let's eat." The dinner proceeded with awkward small talk about quarterly sales figures and office politics. I smiled at the appropriate moments, refilled wine glasses, and served dessert, a lavender panna cotta that I'd tested 3 times to get right. No one complimented the food. Derek spent most of the meal showing Todd something on his phone. When our guests finally left around 11, Derek loosened his tie and headed toward the bedroom. That went well, right? Gerald seemed impressed with the presentation I mentioned. I was clearing plates in the kitchen, scraping $75 worth of organic ingredients into the garbage disposal. It went exactly as it should have. "You're not mad about the candle thing, are you?" He appeared in the doorway, already in sweatpants, scratching his stomach. "I was just joking around. You know how Todd is. I'm not mad." "Good. Because you were being kind of extra tonight. I mean, anniversary or not, it's a Thursday. We're not kids playing house anymore." I rinsed a plate under scalding water, watching red wine stains spiral down the drain. "You're absolutely right. We're not kids." That was the moment. That was when I decided. Derek had no idea that his mockery had finally pushed me past some invisible line. He had no idea that the woman loading the dishwasher at midnight, still in her anniversary dress, had already begun calculating exactly how much his cruelty was about to cost him. What he especially didn't know was that I'd been documenting every dismissive comment, every public humiliation, every casual cruelty for the past 14 months. Not because I'd been planning this, at least not consciously, but because my therapist had suggested keeping a journal of moments that made me feel diminished. That journal was about to become very useful. "I'm going to bed," Derek announced. "Work meeting at 7. Don't forget to turn off all those ridiculous candles." I looked at the candles, still burning on the dining table, their light reflecting off the good china we'd registered for 7 years ago. China we'd used exactly 4 times, all at my insistence, all met with his complaints about being too fancy for a random Tuesday. "Actually," I said, "I think I'll leave them burning, just to watch something beautiful turn to ash." Derek was already halfway up the stairs and didn't hear me. Just as well. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I'd titled Household Records, 14 months of photographs, time-stamped messages, and dated journal entries. Tomorrow, I'd make an appointment with Patricia Thornton, the divorce attorney my best friend Rachel had recommended 6 months ago, back when I'd first admitted, over too much wine, that my marriage was dying of mockery and contempt. The candles burned down to stubs while I sat at our dining table, still in my anniversary dress, and began making a list of everything Derek had taught me to stop doing: cooking elaborate meals, suggesting date nights, buying thoughtful gifts, trying to maintain romance, caring about his opinion. Starting tomorrow, I'd stop doing all of those things. But I'd also stop doing something Derek had taken for granted for 7 years. Pretending his cruelty didn't have consequences. The morning after our anniversary, I woke at 5:30 and went for a run. Derek was still asleep, snoring into his pillow with his mouth open. I'd stopped finding it endearing around year 3. By the time he stumbled into the kitchen at 7:15, I was showered, dressed for work, and drinking black coffee while reviewing emails on my laptop. No breakfast prepared, no coffee brewing for him, no lunch packed in the refrigerator with a note like I'd done every single morning for 7 years. "You're up early," he mumbled, opening the fridge and staring at the empty shelves with confusion. "Where's breakfast?" "I didn't make any." He turned to look at me. "You feeling okay?" "Fine. Just realized I've been wasting time on things that aren't appreciated." I closed my laptop and stood, grabbing my bag. "There's cereal in the pantry." "Melissa, come on, don't be like that about last night." "I'm not being like anything. You were right. I was being extra. So I'm stopping." I headed toward the garage door. "I have an 8 o'clock meeting. I'll be home late." I wasn't home late. I was home at exactly 6:30, the same time I'd arrived home every day for 7 years, but I didn't start dinner. Instead, I changed into comfortable clothes and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. Derek came home at 7:45, carrying takeout from the Thai place 3 blocks away. "Figured you'd be too tired to cook," he said, setting the bag down. "Got your usual." "Thanks." I didn't look up from my screen. We ate in silence. He kept glancing at me, clearly waiting for me to ask about his day or tell him about mine. I did neither. After dinner, he settled on the couch with a beer and turned on a basketball game. I went upstairs to our spare bedroom, the one I'd been slowly converting into a home office, and closed the door. At 9:30, I heard him call up the stairs. "You coming to bed?" "Soon, finishing some work." What I was actually doing was creating a detailed spreadsheet. Column A, date. Column B, incident description. Column C, witnesses present. Column D, financial impact. Column E, emotional harm category. 14 months of data took 3 hours to organize properly. Rachel called while I was working. "How was the anniversary dinner?" "Exactly what I needed it to be." "That doesn't sound good." "I made an appointment with Patricia Thornton for Friday afternoon. Can you come with me?" Silence on her end. Then, "Finally. What time?" Friday afternoon, Patricia Thornton sat across from me and Rachel in her downtown Portland office, reading through the journal I'd printed and bound. She was 52, with gray haircut and a sharp bob and reading glasses that she kept pushing up her nose as she turned pages. "This is remarkably detailed," she said after 20 minutes. "You've documented patterns of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and public humiliation, with witnesses." She looked up at me. "How long have you been planning to leave?" I wasn't. The journal was for therapy. But after last night, I explained the anniversary dinner, Todd's laughter, Ashley's smirk, Derek's complete indifference to the effort I'd made. Patricia nodded slowly. "And you want what exactly?" "Everything he thinks he's entitled to. The house, since I paid 70% of the down payment, but he insisted his name go on the deed equally. Fair division of retirement accounts. And I want him to understand exactly what he lost. The last part isn't legally actionable. I know, but the first parts are." She smiled for the first time. "Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, but we can absolutely argue for an equitable division that reflects actual contributions. Your documentation of his pattern of diminishing your contributions to the household will be useful. Do you have financial records?" I pulled out another folder. Every receipt from the past 7 years, every grocery bill, every home improvement, every utility payment, color-coded by who paid. Patricia's smile widened. "You're my favorite kind of client, the kind who comes prepared." Derek didn't notice anything different for the first week. He complained about having to buy lunch every day and asked twice when I was going to go grocery shopping. But he didn't question why I'd stopped cooking, stopped doing his laundry, stopped managing our social calendar. By week 2, he was irritated. "Are you on some kind of strike?" "No, just stopped doing extra." "Extra?" "Melissa, we're married. Married people take care of each other." I looked up from my laptop. We were in the living room, him on the couch, me in the armchair I'd moved from the bedroom. "You're absolutely right. When was the last time you took care of me?" He blinked. "I work 60 hours a week to pay for this house. I work 55 and make $17,000 more than you annually. Try again." His face flushed. "What the hell is your problem lately?" "I don't have a problem. I'm just no longer solving yours. He stared at me for a long moment, then grabbed his phone and left the room. 5 minutes later, I heard him on the phone with Todd, complaining about how I'd suddenly turned into a cold bitch for no reason. I pulled out my phone and added the date, time, and exact words to my spreadsheet. Then I texted Patricia. He's escalating. Should I move up our timeline? Her response came immediately. No, let him keep showing you who he is. More evidence is always better. 3 weeks after our anniversary, Derek's mother called. Melissa, honey, Derek says you two are having some problems. I was at my desk at work reviewing Q4 marketing projections. Did he say what those problems were, Linda? He mentioned you've stopped cooking and you're being distant. Is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just decided to redistribute my time more efficiently. There was a pause. Marriage takes work, sweetheart. You can't just stop trying when things get hard. You're absolutely right. I tried for 7 years. I'm tired now. Well, that sounds very selfish. I felt my jaw tighten. Linda had always taken Derek's side. When he'd forgotten my birthday 3 years in a row, she'd told me men weren't good with dates. When he'd mocked my promotion to director in front of her entire bridge club, she'd said I was being too sensitive. Linda, I appreciate your concern, but this is between Derek and me. He's my son. If you're treating him badly, I need to go. Work deadline. I ended the call and immediately added it to my documentation. Date, time, witness to Derek's narrative that I was the problem. That evening, Derek came home and went straight upstairs without speaking to me. 20 minutes later, he came back down with 2 of my dresses over his arm. My mother wants to know why you won't wear the clothes she bought you for Christmas. I looked at the dresses, expensive designer pieces and styles I'd never choose, that Linda had selected because they were more feminine than my usual work wardrobe. I'd thanked her politely and hung them in the back of my closet. I don't like them. She spent $800. I didn't ask her to. Derek's face went red. You're being deliberately difficult. She's trying to have a relationship with you and you keep pushing her away. By not wearing clothes she bought without asking what I wanted, by being an ungrateful bitch about everything lately. There it was. The first time he'd called me that to my face. He'd said worse to his friends. I'd overheard him on phone calls, heard the way Todd laughed when Derek complained about his uptight wife. But this was the first direct insult. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. Say that again. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. He stared at the phone, then at me. Are you recording this? I asked you to repeat what you just called me. I didn't. You're twisting everything. I'm trying to save our marriage, and you're acting like a lawyer. Interesting choice of words. I stood up and went to my office, locking the door behind me. He pounded on it twice. Melissa, open the door. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent the voice memo to Patricia with a subject line. Exhibit F. Verbal abuse escalation. Her response came 20 minutes later. Perfect. Keep documenting. How's the separate bank account coming? I'd opened it 2 weeks ago, using my work address for statements. My next 3 paychecks would go directly into it. Oregon was a community property state. But we'd entered the marriage with separate accounts, and I'd been slowly moving money into joint accounts for years. Moving it back out was perfectly legal. The financial separation had been Patricia's idea. Make sure you have immediate access to funds he can't touch, she'd said. Men like Derek often try to control through money once they realize they're losing control of the narrative. She'd been right to worry. When I checked our joint account that night, Derek had transferred $15,000 to his personal account, half of what we'd saved for a vacation to Ireland I'd planned for next spring. A vacation he'd complained was too expensive and too much hassle every time I'd brought it up. I screenshot the transaction and emailed it to Patricia with the subject line. Exhibit G. Financial manipulation in anticipation of divorce, because I hadn't told him yet. That was Patricia's strategy. Let him show his hand completely before we show ours. Right now, he thinks you're just being difficult. He doesn't realize you're building a case. By week 5, Derek had stopped speaking to me unless absolutely necessary. He'd started coming home later, sometimes not until 10 or 11 at night. He said he was working late, but his Lexus was parked outside Todd's apartment 3 times when I drove past after my yoga class. I didn't confront him. I just documented the times, took photos of his car, and noted that he'd left dirty dishes in the sink and expected me to clean them. I stopped cleaning them. By week 6, we had no clean plates. Derek finally ran the dishwasher himself, badly, loading it like he'd never seen one before. He broke a wine glass and left the pieces in the bottom rack. My mother called next. Linda says you and Derek are having troubles. Linda talks too much. Melissa Ann, that's not fair. She's worried about her son, and frankly, so am I. You're not acting like yourself. I'm acting exactly like myself. That's the problem. Derek never liked who I actually was. He liked who I pretended to be. Marriage is about compromise. I've been compromising for 7 years. I'm done. My mother sighed. Your father and I raised you better than this. You don't just give up when things get hard. You also raised me not to accept disrespect. Remember what you told me when I was 16 and that boy called me stupid? You said never let anyone make me feel small. Derek's been making me feel small for 7 years. And you want me to compromise with that? Silence. Then quietly, has he been cruel to you? Yes. Why didn't you say something? Would you have believed me? Or would you have told me I was too sensitive, that men show love differently? That I needed to try harder? Another long silence. I need to think about this. She hung up. That night, Derek came home at 7 for the first time in weeks. He was carrying flowers, grocery store carnations, the cheap kind that die in 3 days. I think we need to talk, he said, setting them on the counter. About us. This. He gestured vaguely at the kitchen, which I'd stopped cleaning entirely. Dishes were piled in the sink. The trash was overflowing. The floor hadn't been mopped in 6 weeks. This isn't normal. You're right. For 7 years, I maintained this house while working full-time, and you treated it like I was your maid. That wasn't normal either. I never asked you to do all that. You never offered to help, because you never asked. I shouldn't have to ask my husband to be an equal partner in our home. He ran his hand through his hair. What do you want from me, Melissa? An apology? Fine. I'm sorry I didn't appreciate everything you did. But this, he gestured at me, at the kitchen, at the distance between us. This isn't solving anything. You're right again. This isn't solving anything. I pulled the divorce papers from my bag and set them on the counter next to his cheap flowers. But these will. His face went white. What? I'm filing for divorce. You'll be served officially on Monday, but I wanted to give you advance notice out of courtesy. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. I've consulted with an attorney. I have documentation of your pattern of emotional abuse, public humiliation, and financial manipulation. Oregon is a no-fault state, but we're still going to argue for an equitable division that reflects actual contributions to our marital assets. Derek's hands were shaking as he picked up the papers. This is insane. You're insane. All because I laughed at some candles? No, because you spent 7 years teaching me that nothing I did would ever be enough for you. The candles were just the moment I decided to stop trying. Derek hired an attorney within 48 hours. His name was Richard Sterling, a bulldog litigator who specialized in defending men in divorce proceedings. I knew this because Patricia had anticipated exactly who Derek would hire. Apparently, Todd had gone through an ugly divorce 2 years ago and used Sterling. He's going to go for the throat, Patricia warned me during our Monday meeting. Sterling's strategy is always to paint the wife as unstable, vindictive, or both. He'll argue you abandoned the marriage without cause and that you're trying to steal assets Derek rightfully earned. Except I have proof of everything. Proof helps, but be prepared for him to twist it. Sterling is very good at making documentation look like obsession. She was right. By Wednesday, Derek had filed a counter motion claiming I'd been secretly planning to leave him for over a year, that I'd manipulated finances to benefit myself, and that my sudden withdrawal of affection and household contributions constituted abandonment of marital duties. I read the filing at my desk during lunch, then forwarded it to Patricia with a simple message. He gave us exactly what we needed. Her response, indeed. See you Friday at mediation. Mediation was mandatory in Oregon before divorce proceedings could move to trial. Derek showed up with Sterling, both of them in expensive suits, projecting confidence. Derek wouldn't look at me directly. The mediator was a tired-looking woman in her 60s named Joan Hartley. She'd been doing this for 30 years and had the expression of someone who'd seen every variation of human pettiness. Let's start with assets, she said. You own a home jointly, valued at $480,000. Current mortgage balance is $290,000. Equity of $190,000. Sterling jumped in. My client requests the marital home. He's willing to buy out Mrs. Walsh's portion at fair market value. I want the house, I said calmly. I paid 70% of the down payment from my personal savings. I have bank records proving it. Sterling smiled. Gifts between spouses during marriage can't be reclaimed. Patricia slid a document across the table. Except my client has documentation that she explicitly stated in an email dated 3 months before the home purchase that she expected her larger down payment to be reflected in equity distribution should the marriage dissolve. Mr. Walsh responded, and I quote, "Whatever makes you happy, babe." Not planning on divorcing you anyway. That's acknowledgement of the condition. Derek's face went red. You kept that email for 7 years? I keep all financial correspondence, I said. It's good business practice. Joan reviewed the email. This does establish clear intent. Continue. Sterling wasn't smiling anymore. Fine. Let's discuss retirement accounts. My client has a 401k valued at $95,000. Mrs. Walsh's 401k is valued at $138,000 because I contributed more, I said. I make more money, and I've been in my position longer. Community property state, Sterling said. All assets acquired during marriage are split equally regardless of individual contribution. Patricia leaned back. That's true. So let's talk about Mr. Walsh's truck. Purchased 3 years ago for $43,000. Financed entirely through the joint account despite Mrs. Walsh's objection. Documented in text messages where she stated a new vehicle wasn't necessary. Mr. Walsh responded by calling her cheap and controlling. Derek whispered something to Sterling, who frowned and flipped through his notes. We're also interested in discussing the $15,000 Mr. Walsh transferred from the joint savings to his personal account last month, Patricia continued, done without Mrs. Walsh's knowledge or consent. That's my money, Derek burst out. I earned it. From the joint account you both contributed to, Patricia said calmly, which makes it theft under Oregon law. We could press charges, but we're willing to waive that if Mr. Walsh returns the full amount plus interest. Joan was taking notes. Mr. Sterling, your response? Sterling looked at Derek, who was sweating despite the air conditioning. We'll return the funds. Good. Now let's discuss the credit cards. Patricia pulled out another document. Mrs. Walsh has documentation showing that over the past 7 years, she paid off approximately $67,000 in credit card debt that Mr. Walsh accumulated. Charges include a fishing boat he used twice, multiple hunting trips with friends, and what appears to be several $1,000s at strip clubs. Derek's face went from red to white. Those were client entertainment expenses. Funny, Patricia said. Your tax returns don't show any of those deductions, which means either you committed tax fraud or they were personal expenses charged to the joint account. Sterling was flipping through papers frantically. We need to review these allegations. Take your time, Joan said. We have all day. The mediation lasted 6 hours. By the end, Derek had agreed to return the $15,000, surrender his claim to the house, accept a smaller share of the retirement accounts, and pay my legal fees. We walked out to the parking garage at 8 p.m. Patricia was smiling. That went better than I expected. Sterling didn't have answers for half our documentation, because Derek assumed I wasn't paying attention all those years. Men like him always do. She paused by her car. He's going to be angry. Make sure you're safe. I'm staying with Rachel until the house sells. Good. Also, one more thing. She pulled an envelope from her briefcase. This came to my office this morning, from Todd's ex-wife. I opened it. Inside was a 3-page letter detailing how Todd and Derek had spent the past 5 years going to strip clubs every Friday night, running up thousands in charges they hid from their wives. She included credit card statements, photos, and a particularly damning screenshot of a group text where Derek had written, "Marriage is just a long con until you make enough money to trade up to a younger model." The date on that text was 2 months after our wedding. She heard through mutual friends that you were divorcing him, Patricia said. Wanted you to have ammunition. Apparently, Derek made comments at Todd's divorce proceedings that she never forgot. I stared at the words. Trade up to a younger model. 2 months into our marriage. Can we use this? We won't need to. We already won. But keep it. Sometimes, knowing the truth is enough. The house sold in 3 weeks for $495,000, $15,000 over asking. A bidding war between 2 young families who saw potential in the home I'd spent 7 years maintaining. Derek showed up drunk to the final walkthrough. Rachel was with me, along with Patricia and a police officer she'd arranged to be present, just in case. You're really doing this, Derek said, leaning against the kitchen counter where I'd served him breakfast for 7 years. Taking everything. I'm taking what's mine. There's a difference. That's bullshit, and you know it. His words were slurred. You planned this whole thing. You manipulated everything. I documented everything, also not the same thing. He pushed off the counter and took a step toward me. The police officer moved closer. You were supposed to love me. I did love you. Until you spent 7 years teaching me I was stupid for it. I never said that. I pulled out my phone and played a recording. His voice crystal clear from a conversation with Todd 4 months ago that I'd recorded when he'd butt-dialed me. Melissa's so desperate for attention, dude. Makes these elaborate dinners like I'm supposed to be impressed. It's pathetic. Derek's face crumpled. You recorded me? You butt-dialed me. I just didn't hang up. I put my phone away. You have 30 minutes to get your remaining things from the garage. Everything else stays with the house per the settlement agreement. He stared at me, tears actually running down his face. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Can we please just talk about this? We talked about it for 7 years. You weren't listening. Melissa, please. I love you. I know I screwed up, but we can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want. Just please. No, that single word hit him like a physical blow. He actually staggered back. You're really that cold? He whispered. After everything, I'm exactly as cold as you taught me to be. I gestured toward the door. Your time is starting. He grabbed a box from the garage, old fishing gear and some tools, and left without looking back. The police officer followed him out to make sure he actually left the property. Rachel hugged me once his truck disappeared down the street. How do you feel? Free. The final settlement came through 6 weeks later. I got $147,000 from the house sale after paying off the remaining mortgage. Derek got $43,000. I kept my full retirement account. He kept his, minus the amount that represented my larger contributions to joint savings over the years. He had to pay $12,000 in my legal fees. But the real victory came 3 months after our divorce was finalized. I was having coffee with Rachel at our favorite cafe downtown when Todd walked in with Ashley. They didn't see us in the corner booth. I heard Derek's living with his mom now, Ashley was saying, after Melissa took him to the cleaners. Dude got what he deserved, Todd replied, surprising me. I kept telling him to treat her better, but he thought he was so smart that she'd never leave. Men always think that. Not all of us. I learned my lesson with my ex. Derek didn't. Todd ordered their drinks, then added, plus, he's screwed at work. Gerald promoted someone else to senior sales manager last week. Apparently, Derek's numbers have been shit since the divorce. They collected their order and left. Rachel was grinning at me. You hear that? His numbers are down. He's distracted by consequences. Funny how that works. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Can we have lunch this week? I'd like to talk. We met on Wednesday at a restaurant she chose. She was already seated when I arrived, looking nervous. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. What did you want to talk about? She took a breath. I spoke with Linda last week. About Derek. About you. About the divorce. And? She told me things. About how he talked about you to his friends. About the strip clubs and the credit cards. About the text messages. My mother's eyes were wet. She found them when she was helping him move out of the house. She's horrified. She should be. She raised him. I should be too. I should have believed you when you told me he was cruel. She reached across the table. I'm sorry, Melissa. I failed you. I told you to compromise with someone who was abusing you, and I'm so sorry. I didn't take her hand immediately. Why are you apologizing now? Because I was wrong. Because I let my ideas about marriage blind me to what was actually happening to my daughter. Because I'm ashamed that it took seeing evidence to believe you instead of just trusting your word. I finally took her hand. Thank you for saying that. We had lunch. She asked about my life now. I'd moved into a smaller condo downtown, was taking pottery classes, had been on 3 dates with a man named James who was a marine biologist, and who'd responded to my story about the anniversary dinner by saying, "That's terrible. You deserved better. You seem happier," my mother said as we were leaving. I am. Turns out not being mocked daily is good for your mental health. Derek called me once, 3 months after the divorce was final. I didn't answer, but he left a voicemail. Melissa, it's me. I know I'm not supposed to contact you, but I needed to tell you something. I get it now. I understand what I did, how I treated you. I've been in therapy, and my therapist helped me see. I was cruel. I was abusive. I took you for granted, and I mocked you for caring about our marriage. You deserved so much better. And I'm sorry. I know it's too late, and I know you've moved on. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what I lost. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I destroyed it. I hope you're happy. I really do. I hope you find someone who appreciates all the things I was too stupid to see. Goodbye, Melissa. I deleted the voicemail without finishing it. A year after I signed the divorce papers, I was loading groceries into my car outside Whole Foods when I saw Derek across the parking lot. He'd aged badly, thinner, grayer, with the posture of someone carrying invisible weight. He was alone, loading cheap beer and frozen dinners into an older Honda Civic I didn't recognize. The Lexus was apparently gone. He saw me. We made eye contact across 3 rows of cars. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just closed my trunk and drove away. That night, James came over for dinner. I made coq au vin, the same dish I'd made for that anniversary dinner, and he'd brought wine that actually paired with it because he'd researched French regional pairings. "This is incredible," he said, and meant it. "Where did you learn to cook like this?" "Practice. I used to cook a lot." "Well, I'm glad you still do. This is restaurant quality." After dinner, he helped me clean up without being asked, then lit the candles I'd bought, the same honey and bergamot ones from that night, and didn't make a single joke about them being too much. "I like candles," he said simply. "They're nice." That was it. No mockery, no eye rolling, just genuine appreciation for something I'd chosen. Rachel came over for brunch the next morning and found me in an exceptionally good mood. "Things are going well with James?" "Very well, he's kind." "Wild how that's actually a low bar now, isn't it?" I poured her more coffee. "I got an email from Patricia yesterday. Apparently Derek tried to file an appeal on the settlement." "Are you serious?" "His new attorney apparently convinced him he had grounds based on some technicality about asset disclosure. Patricia shut it down in 48 hours. He withdrew the appeal and got hit with another $5,000 in legal fees for filing frivolously." Rachel shook her head. "He really can't accept that he lost. That's his problem, not mine." 3 months later, I was promoted to vice president of marketing. My salary jumped to $137,000. I bought a new car, not expensive, just reliable, and started planning a solo trip to Ireland for the fall. My mother called when she heard about my promotion. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart." "Thanks, Mom. You know, your father and I were talking. We never should have questioned your decision to divorce Derek. You knew what you needed, and we should have supported you immediately. You're supporting me now. That matters. Still, we wasted time you shouldn't have had to fight for our understanding." She paused. "Linda called me last week. Derek moved to Arizona, some sales job that paid less than what he made here. But he needed a fresh start. Good for him. She asked if I thought you'd ever consider reconciliation. I laughed. Actually laughed. "What did you tell her?" "I told her that would require you to have feelings about him at all. And I don't think you do anymore." She was right. I didn't hate Derek. I didn't think about him most days. He'd become what he always should have been, irrelevant. On my 36th birthday, James threw me a surprise party. Not huge, just Rachel and a few other close friends, in his backyard with string lights and good food, and people who genuinely enjoyed my company. "Make a wish," he said, holding a cake he'd baked himself. I closed my eyes and thought about the woman I'd been 2 years ago, standing in her kitchen at midnight, still in her anniversary dress, deciding she deserved better. I blew out the candles. I didn't wish for anything. I already had everything I needed. A career I loved, friends who valued me, a partner who appreciated me, and the absolute certainty that I'd never again accept less than I deserved. Derek's mockery had taught me that lesson. The price of his education was everything he'd taken for granted. And that, I thought as James kissed me and everyone cheered, was exactly fair.